Now, from this case and others that you see going before the court, it would seem that they're pointing out to procedural failures, particularly in the issue or in the area of procurement. So my explainer tonight is just focusing on the way procurement is done, or at least should be done, by the book, to enable you understand this process and how we got to where we are tonight. So, usually in a case like this, a state corporation or a parastatal thinks about an idea, right? And it could be a construction, it could be a dam, it could be a building, whatever it is. But let's take it from this point of view, that it is a state corporation, or indeed it is a parastatal that has a project idea. Now, the project idea can be on two bases. One can be a need basis. If it's a dam, you say people need water, they need it for irrigation, they need it for planting, that sort of thing. Or it could be a commercial project that will bring profit. So those could be the two bases for a project idea. So the state corporation, which has its own resources to carry out a project, would conceptualize it through the management. They would go to the internal engineers who would then take a look at this, design it, put it together, and as they do that, they would put together an indicative budget for the same. So once the state corporation has initiated this project and conceptualized it, they take it to their board. The board of that parastatal or state corporation will then take a look at the project, take a look at its indicative budget as well, and see that this is something that is viable for that organization or the institution. They would then approve it. Once they do that, they then take it to the parent ministry of that state corporation. Now, the parent ministry would take a look at that indicative budget. They would satisfy themselves that all of the crosses, all of the T's have been crossed, the I's have been dotted, and when they're satisfied with the project, its concept, its budget, how it'll be financed, they then take it to the most critical stage, and this is National Treasury. Now, folks, National Treasury is one of the most important steps in any project that is undertaken by the government. Why? It is the issue of money, it is the issue of finances. So, what the Ministry of Treasury does, or the Treasury Department, is to take a look at it, and particularly through the finance aspect. They take a look at all costs, some that are hidden, some that may be unanticipated, and so they then look at it and say, is this viable? Is this affordable? Now, in the event that the financing of the project is not the state corporation's money and that they're looking to finance it through a commercial loan, then Treasury is even more important in this stage, because they're taking a look at the loan, its terms, its repayment. Is it the cheapest loan? And they would also be seeking to give a government guarantee on that loan that would fund the project. So once they're pleased with this, this project goes back the same way it came. So it would go back to the parent ministry, and then it would go back to the state corporation or the parastatal. Now, at this point, once it goes back to where it was initiated, that would be the state corporation, they would then know this process that many are familiar with. They would invite bids for the tender of the project. And this process goes through something that is well known. If you've ever done a tender, not just with the government, but with any corporation, so the contractors come, they would pick the documents from the state corporation, they would make their quotes, put in their bids. Once the deadline is up, the tenders are open, they're entered into a register to make sure that there is fairness, that no other document is sneaked in after the deadline. And then at this point, remember, we're still at the state corporation stage, there is a tender committee that would go through all the bids that have been brought in. Now, the tender committee, the tender evaluation committee, is usually put together by the CEO of the state corporation. Some of them are permanent, others are ad hoc, just based on project by project. So they would take a look at it, and they would be looking at some two key issues here: the technical capability of the company that is putting in the bid, and the financial as well. Now, I know we always think that they go for the lowest bidder, but not necessarily. You can have the lowest quote, but not have the technical capacity to carry out the project. So they take a look at those two things. Once they pick the winner of the tender, and then they award the tender to the winning company. Now, if there is a dispute, there is an appeal process that goes through, but this essentially is the end. Now, here are some loopholes that you need to look out for in this procurement process. One is that sometimes private companies that go through what you commonly hear as PPP, which is a public-private partnership, can sometimes disguise themselves through their government, so that it's a government-to-government procurement process whose rules are rather relaxed. So that is where the issue would come in. Also, there's the issue of financing. So by the time a project is being paid out, we will have gone through the process that I have enumerated here, which is that the project must have been designed, conceptualized and approved at the state corporation level, at the parent ministry level, and most importantly, at the Treasury Ministry level before any funds can be procured, that is in the event that it is a loan, or paid out by the state corporation. If any of those steps have not been followed, then there would possibly be a problem. What would the prosecution be seeking to prove in a case such as this? And this is not just for what is going on in court right now, but indeed any other case. Well, one, they would be seeking to see whether the project was initially conceptualized and approved before payment is made. They would also be seeking to know what were the rules. Was it a public-private partnership which was being financed by the private entity, or was it a government-to-government loan, in which case the rules are a little bit more relaxed? Those are the things they would seek to be proving if they got approval through all of those stages. But first, a project has to be designed, it has to be approved before payment is made, not the other way around. If the prosecution is able to prove that case, then they have made their case before the court of law. But now you know the process it goes through before a tender is finally awarded and payment then begins. And also the very important role that Treasury plays in any tender process that takes place across the parastatals, state corporations, ministries, government-to-government deals. That's my explainer tonight.